another one, crashes, which I personally think they're a little bit unfair, big carriers versus small carriers, but how do crashes affect a compliance audit? What is that crash per mile, per truck, per driver that we consultants talk to carriers all the time?
Sure. So I'm gonna let Murphy get into the meat and potatoes of the crashes, but for the smaller companies that maybe 1 to 10 drivers, I mean, the name of the game is not to get into a crash. Right? The name of the game is not to have a fatal, not to have an injury, not to have a tow, not to have anything that's gonna go on your crash record. That's the name of the game. So with that being said, one carrier that has one crash and they go through a review or an investigation, that's not gonna affect them. The moment that carrier has 2 crashes, it is gonna affect them. And we all know that one driver, one carrier operation cannot get 1 million miles in 1 year. I mean, that's almost impossible. It's, that driver's driving, But I'll let Murphy get into that part. He just did a preventability, and I think this information will be helpful for everybody. But remember, I told you this, the name of the game is to make sure you train your drivers so they can be good drivers and not get into crashes and have accidents. That's the number one thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so like Rick said, a safe carrier is allowed 1.5 crashes per million miles traveled. So if I have one truck, I'm not going to do 1 million miles, so 2 accidents would put me over to 1.5. So a larger company, it's calculated based on 1.5 per million miles. So I've got 10 million miles I do in a year, and I'm allowed 1.5 accidents. So what does that give you, 6 or 7, whatever it is. So we have a definition of a DOT recordable. If we have a tow away, somebody injured, treated away from the scene, or a fatality is involved. So one of those 3 things occurs, now it's a DOT recordable. That's going to be in your record, and now they did add this where you could data queue and challenge those. But no action is going to be taken until we come in for an investigation. So if you have too many accidents, we're going to come in and we're going to evaluate. Now that's the point that we're going to do a accident preventability determination, and that's done by the division administrator of the FMCSA. So you have to provide compelling evidence that it was not preventable. There's no way your driver could have prevented that crash. And the group before us talked about dash cams. I'll tell you what, the dash cams have saved more companies in my investigations than have gotten them in trouble. The dash cam, typically that's going to let us know if that was preventable or not. Based on the information I have, I can't prove that it was not preventable. Then I see the video, I find out something crazy happened and there was no way that driver could have prevented it. So we won't use that crash. If we don't use the crash, then, as far as your crash rating, we won't count that one, but only at the time of the investigation. So if it brings your numbers down below 1.5, it won't affect your rating at all. But if it does, it will put your company conditional. A company with greater than 1.5 accidents, it's automatic conditional, even without any other violations.
So this brings us to what is a preventable and what is a non-preventable accident, because people get confused.
Okay, another good question. It's not about whose fault was it. Was a CDL driver is a professional driver. He's been trained, he's gone through, all kinds of testing to be able to be a professional driver. So he's supposed to know how to prevent accidents. So they have a very high standard for that. If the driver stops at say a traffic light and gets rear-ended, well, that's probably something that he could not have prevented. So we won't use that one based on the determination. But if both the vehicles are moving and anybody's changing lanes, that's where they talked earlier about the cameras for the lane cameras. That could help. But if a driver sees the potential for an accident, or there's ways to prevent these accidents, they'll deem it either way. But that's determined by the division administrator for the state in Illinois, it's FMCSA Division Administrator, yeah.
This is where carriers get confused. You know, I get calls, I need you to challenge this accident because my driver is not at fault. Does it have anything to do with fault?
No, not at all. It has nothing to do with fault. So the FMCSA has a list of every possible or potential thing that can be preventable, not preventable. And if that driver, let's just say the driver had his turn signal on, and I'm just gonna give you an example. I don't drive trucks. Even though I have a CDL, I don't drive trucks. He has his turn signal on, and he checks his rearview mirror, and he goes to do a lane change. And all of a sudden, another car comes out of nowhere, maybe on a ramp or whatever. Most people would say, oh man, that's not the truck driver's fault. He had a turn signal on, he switched lanes. But then if he has another car that came up the ramp out of nowhere, do you think your driver should have been changing lanes into the right lane and there's a ramp right there? I would say no. Anybody agree with me? No? Yes? Don't be scared. I would say no. So these are the type of things that the FMCSA is faced with when they got to look at fault, no fault. So it may not have been the driver's fault, but he did have his signal on. But they look at the scenario and say, well, let's analyze this. Should that driver have been in that lane or trying to go into that lane with that oncoming ramp right there? So I'm just giving you a scenario of things that this is what they're challenged with, and they're not always right. You know, and you can re-challenge a preventability if you have additional evidence to refute their decision. So.
Thank you.